Better Call Saul is my favorite television show of all time. And now that it's over, it's time to go through my top 10 episodes. In all honesty, almost the entire series could be honorable mentions, so I'm just going to skip over them. If you guys like this video though, I could do a part 2. But let's get to the top 10. Number 10, Fun and Games, Season 6, Episode 9. Better Call Saul executes much of what it does flawlessly, but perhaps one of the aspects of production that stands out the most is their ability to montage. And this episode opens with one of the best. Typically, with these montages, we're seeing plot and character combine in a fun and creative way. It's usually jovial and enjoyable. But this is the episode directly following the tragedy and fallout of Howard's execution, and it shows Jimmy and Kim as they attempt to act their way through the day, something they'd both become quite accustomed to in the years to follow. It's hollow, it's empty, it's depressing. The song choice, as per usual, is splendid. It also is showcasing a cross-section between all of our main characters. Now that the cartel and legal world have fully collided, this montage is kind of a culmination of everything we've seen from Mike, Kim, and Jimmy all at once. Kim and Jimmy dealing with the consequences of their scheming, and Mike burying yet another man who wasn't in the game. And this is just the intro. We have Jimmy's fruitless attempts to console the traumatized Kim, Mike's fruitless attempts to console Nacho's father with promises of revenge, and Gus's fruitless attempts to dip his toes back into a world of normalcy. It's a notably slower paced episode than the two preceding it, but the character moments tend to be the bread and butter of this show. Character work, cinematography, and deliberate, thoughtful visual storytelling. Finally, this episode has the dissolution of the Kim and Jimmy relationship, and it's brutal. It's one of the best acted scenes of the entire show and results with the eventual time jump into the Saul Goodman we know and love or hate. While this jump felt jarring to some, I think they placed every single domino perfectly for them to all topple to the events of Breaking Bad. We know Jimmy's trauma, his coping mechanisms, and the one thing holding his grasp on himself was his connection to Kim. Once she's gone, so is he. Subtle highlights of the episode also include the fire in Gus's glasses during the confrontation with Hector, the way the Mike scene was filmed to make it look like he was behind bars talking to Nacho's father, the fact that Jimmy and Kim finally said I love you, and overall just the acting. Howard's funeral scene was also heartbreaking. Number 9, Lantern, Season 3, Episode 10. Chuck's forceful ousting from HHM following Jimmy's malicious scheming sets in motion just about every part of Jimmy's eventual downfall. I remember being kind of happy seeing Chuck kicked out on my first viewing, but I think Kim's words from a previous episode rang true about it just being them tearing down a sick man. Being a practicing lawyer is the one thing that kept Chuck just a little bit grounded, and once that was gone, he lost it. Hard. One of the saddest moments of the show is when he says to Jimmy that he never meant all that much to him. There are other awesome scenes too, like Nacho's father standing up to Hector, although it's short-lived. Jimmy turns around his scamming of the elderly to do the right thing, which is a bright spot in a challenging episode, and Hector has his big collapse. With how amazing Chicanery is, it's really easy to overlook how many big plot and character moments are packed in here. It has the best and worst of humanity. A lantern used to light the pages Chuck reads to his younger brother Jimmy as children is now used to burn himself and his house to the ground. Number 8, Rockin' Hard Place, Season 6, Episode 3. One of the best parts of this show is how it breaks the formula we had all gotten used to. Typically, the first half of the season sets up a bigger second half as the pieces all come tumbling down. But in this case, we essentially get an entire episode devoted to the epic of Nacho. The cold open is one of my favorites in the series. Season 6 got so dark and depressing that every little moment of light shined all the brighter, and Nacho's triumphant and heroic exit is no exception. Apart from the obviously epic ending and previously mentioned cold open, there is his heartbreaking final conversation with his father, the understated relationship with Mike, and the jaw-droppingly disgusting oil scene. I swear I didn't breathe for minutes when the scene began, and I can say the same thing about all of the Nacho scenes from Season 6. They do such a good job in immersing you in the environment despite it being simply on a screen. I felt the heat of his hotel as the air conditioning died, and I could smell the oil as it stuck to his skin. There are a few Jimmy and Kim scenes sprinkled throughout the episode, and they are good, but Nacho really steals the show here, and it's a fitting send-off to a beloved character. His love for his father is the real scene stealer, as we are so often drenched in selfishness and pettiness in this series. Number 7, Waterworks, Season 6, Episode 12. Probably the biggest surprise for me of this entire series is Kim Wexler. I liked her from the start, but she grew on me to the point that I found myself screaming at the screen when she decided to drop helping people and pursue her dreams of tearing down Howard for no reason other than fun. Her arc is fully fleshed out and tragic, and with the drab nature of the second half of the season, it was hard to root for anyone anymore. That was until we saw Kim actually redeem herself by turning herself in. There are so many details and themes woven together in this episode in ways that are too intricate for this video, but I'd like to note some of the religious iconography. Courtney's reviews on YouTube pointed out some that I had missed, but we see divine intervention play a role when Gene breaks into the man with cancer's house. There are crosses in his residence, and he falls asleep right as he's about to face certain peril. There is the cross on Marion's neck, which could have protected her and Gene from a more grisly fate. There are the gates that open to heaven, ready to judge Kim for her past misgivings. She gives a powerhouse performance. The Breaking Bad flashbacks are on point. Everything strikes at the perfect moment. I love considering why the showrunners decided to show certain clips when. Why do we juxtapose the events going on now with the scene with Jesse, or the divorce papers scene? Why do we wait to show the phone call now? Every time I take time to consider these questions, I find the answers to be so satisfying. I didn't expect to be as invested in this future timeline as I was in the Jimmy timeline, but the withholding of Kim's fate left me painfully curious, so that when it finally was revealed, I practically gasped. I love that despite it being the penultimate episode of the show, they do not rush for even a second. They take time on every scene to fully plot out Kim's penance, which made the phone call from Gene all the more jarring. Number 6, 5-0. Season 1, Episode 6. I was one of the people who was more hesitant to join the Better Call Saul train. It took until the release of Season 3 for me to really give the show an honest try, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. Part of my hesitation was that I was so sure I wouldn't find anyone in the show to be likable. Would I have anybody to root for? Absolutely. At some point, I was rooting for just about every character minus the Salamancas. But the standout of the early seasons was absolutely Mike. I was floored at the depth they provided for his character, a character I felt was fully fleshed out in Breaking Bad. And this is basically the Mike origin story. What I appreciated most about the episode, coming back to it, other than the fantastically tense and tragic second half, was the way they interwove Jimmy into the mix. It was so impressive to see these two totally opposite characters continually cross paths in meaningful and engaging ways. I also loved the psychological experiment done by the end, after Mike's amazing scene where he proclaims that he broke his boy, and his confession to his daughter about the murder of the cops. He asks if she can live with that knowledge, if she can live with the fact that he murdered 2 cops, the 2 that killed Maddie. And it makes me wonder, would I? Or would you? Number 5, Bagman. Season 5, Episode 8. Bagman is an instantly iconic episode of Saul that plays much more like a Breaking Bad episode. It's out in the desert, it's directed by Vince Gilligan, has crazy violence and shootouts, and gorgeous cinematography. There are instantly striking images, such as the use of glow sticks to light Mike and Saul's nightly chats. Similarly to the oppressiveness of the nacho scenes in Season 6, this episode grabs you and pulls you violently with brutality in detail. Every single thing we are shown is intentional and paints an immersive picture that makes me desperate for water. Just look at the costume design, makeup, and dry lips. Holy cow, look at those things! Beyond the bombast of the episode, there are copious amounts of character moments and a full exploration of shock and trauma. This might be the moment that really broke Jimmy, as he becomes catatonic, similarly to the episode after Chuck's passing. The episode is iconic enough to be featured in the finale with the time jump, and it's so separate from the rest of the show. The majority of Better Call Saul is showcased in legal battles, personal discussions, and scheming. But this is more of a bottle episode, lost in the desert with 2 classic characters. Some of my favorite interactions of the Breaking Bad universe are between Mike and Jimmy, so having these 2, who had been separated for a bit at this point, was satisfying and heartfelt. The thing with Saul is that the episodes are all so consistently good, the episodes usually don't jump out at you dramatically over others. But when you have a special setup like this, it's hard not to have Bagman in the top tier. Number 4, Winner. Season 4, Episode 10. Upon rewatching the show, this was the episode that surprised me the most, by far. I was pretty sure which episodes I'd see make this list, and I didn't think it would be any from Season 4. Season 4 is consistently great, but there isn't a standout episode like Bagman that just gripped me. Or so I thought. It has my absolute favorite cold open from the show. Likely second favorite scene in the entire series, with Jimmy and Chuck's karaoke. The song choice is, like always, flawless, but so much is said with so little dialogue. It's tragic to see what their relationship could have been, but that's where I thought the amazement would end. It didn't. The fight to find Werner is tense and nail-biting, and we get to see Lalo in full Lalo action for the first time. Jimmy fighting tooth and nail for Christy Esposito as a stand-in for himself is somehow inspiring and saddening at the same time. His eventual bar hearing scene was the culmination of years of brotherly build-up, and juxtaposed with the cold open is extremely sad. But the real showstopper is, of course, the scene with Mike and Werner out in the desert. It's this scene where Mike's arc feels complete, and we know exactly how he ended up who he was in Breaking Bad. It's shot, acted, and written to perfection. Something I appreciate so much about the showrunners is their ability to sit in silence when appropriate, and they undoubtedly take their time here. Mike's decision to kill Werner is out of compassion, yet seems to solidify his unfeelingness. It's hard to watch. Before I get to my top 3, remember to like the video if you're enjoying the content, and subscribe for more videos. Number 3, Chicanery, Season 3, Episode 5. I suppose it's no surprise to anyone who has watched the show to see Chicanery this high. It's a great lawyer episode of television. It's a great Saul episode. It's a great Breaking Bad universe episode. It's a great scheming episode. It's a great drama episode. It does just about everything right, in such a uniquely Better Call Saul way. In some ways, this is the first Better Call Saul Ozymandias. In Breaking Bad, everything builds over the course of 5.5 seasons to get the collapse of Walt, his family, and his empire. However, Saul is split more into sections. Section 1 is like the Chuck saga. Section 2 is the Howard saga, and Section 3 is the Gene saga. In each one of these sections, there is a cataclysmic event that plays as the culmination of the seasons of build-up. And Chicanery is this for the first 3 seasons of Better Call Saul. Every single piece of the show, Jimmy and his scheming, his relationship with Chuck, lawyering, his connection to the vet and criminals, all plays a role in the collapse of Chuck. The part that makes this so layered is how Chuck is actually right this whole time. Yet most viewers side with Jimmy because of Chuck's spitefulness. Upon rewatching, knowing where Jimmy ends up, I actually had a lot more sympathy for Chuck throughout the series. This episode became even more valuable to me. I remembered Chuck as almost a purely evil, malevolent force, pulling the strings to ruin everything Jimmy strove for. And while that's partially true, there's something to be said about the hints of good we see in Chuck. Perhaps if he believed in his brother just a bit more, we never would have gotten Saul Goodman. But if Jimmy didn't try so hard to destroy him, maybe Chuck would still be himself. He would at least be alive. There are so many video essays on the contents of this episode, from dissections of the legal components to the effectiveness, subtext, and framing of the montages. The cold open shows how far the two brothers have fallen, from standing up for each other to tearing each other down. And it will go down as one of the greatest episodes of television. Number 2, Saul Gone, Season 6, Episode 13. The successful conclusion to a television series is no easy feat. Just ask anyone who worked on Game of Thrones. I found myself watching this show from a cerebral perspective a lot of the time. I'd be floored by the product itself, but not necessarily as emotionally invested in the decisions of the characters as I wanted to be. That all changed in Season 6, as Gene's plummet into depravity really disgusted me. I was pleading with fingers crossed that there would be redemption for this character, and my heart sank when I saw this episode start to play out. I was begging for a turn, and when it did come, it was one of the most satisfying moments in any piece of entertainment that I had ever consumed. Even when I thought I was pretty sure it would happen, seeing it actually play out provided more catharsis than even the Breaking Bad finale. I was also extremely pleasantly surprised to see the return of classic characters like Bill, Oakley, and Marie, two people who I didn't expect to see but fit in beautifully. Then we have the time machine motif. Of course, there is the motif of Bad Choice Road formulated earlier in the show. The idea that when you make a bad choice, it sets you on a path of a series of bad choices. This is absolutely true, and it applies to more than just Better Call Saul. But I think the time machine theming is a slight counter to the determinist view put forth previously. Yes, making these choices does set you on a bad choice road. But as Chuck says, if you don't like where you're heading, there's no shame in going back and changing your path. Seeing someone finally break that path that they are on, even if it is extremely late, pulled me from the darkness of the black and white timeline back into a world of color. Each of the 3 cameos in the flashbacks are purposeful and lively, and it really solidified Better Call Saul as a twisted love story between Jimmy and Kim. It helps every piece before fit that much better, and for that, it has to take a place near the top. Number 1, Plan and Execution, Season 6, Episode 7. Plan and Execution is quintessential Better Call Saul in the same way Chicanery is, except every single component is dialed up to 11. It doesn't just have great scheming, great comedy, and great tragedy. It possibly has the best scheming, the best comedy, and the worst tragedy of the entire Breaking Bad universe. I'm aware that there are conflicting opinions on the character of Howard, but as the series goes on, there is no possible way anyone could argue that he got what he deserved. As Mike would say, he wasn't even in the game. The episode plays in 3 parts: the production, the execution, and the other execution. Every single part of the camera crew and actor is filmed to perfection, with the spinning one-take-ish shot to emphasize the chaotic nature of their scrambled filming. The crew is in full goofiness mode, really showing off the fun that Kim and Jimmy are having in preparing the destruction of another human. The execution is precise and calculated, with numerous comedic reveals throughout. It's tense but funny. We have the photos being swapped, which legitimately made me burst out in laughter the first time I saw it. But there's also a hint of disgust, as I had become a fan of Howard, and seeing him get absolutely obliterated made me feel uncomfortable and gross, even as I laughed along. And then there's the downfall of Howard and murder by Lalo Salamanca. The candle being used as a device to hint that somebody has entered the home is set up and paid off to perfection, and the entire way this sequence was shot made my stomach stop the first time. When Lalo blurs into view, I legitimately got horror villain vibes, as he feels like a demonic force of death sneakily shading into the room. The close-up shots of Saul's face look twisted as they zoomed out the lens but got as close as possible. The music is haunting and sparse, and the acting is suitably chilling. Then Lalo twists his gun to silence the shot, much the same way as Chuck twisted his soda cans to silence Jimmy's scheming. I don't think an episode of television has ever affected me so viscerally. My stomach dropped and stayed there for hours after the episode, and I'm so glad they took a break because I don't know if I could have handled the follow-up just 1 week after. The collision of these two unrelated worlds feels wrong in every sense of the word and plays as a nail in the coffin for Jimmy, Kim, Howard, and so many others. What a perfect episode of television. And anyways, that's my top 10 episodes. Let me know your favorite episodes down below in the comments, and I'll be reading them. Thanks a bunch for watching, and stay awesome. Peace.